So there have been numerous contemporary researchers that have explored brain dysfunction and how it relates to criminology. There are many types of dysfunctions, and to start off, I'll just name a few. Um, Dysfunctions possibly involved in aggression are mirror cell deficiency, allergic reactions to common food, emotional trauma, disease, long-term exposure to stress, and neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to alter its structure and function in response to experience. Um, there's this technology called PET, which is position emission tomography, and this technology can measure the uptake of glucose in the brain, amongst other things. And the results of the PET scans were pretty interesting. So in 1994, a study was conducted by University of Pennsylvania psychologist Adrian Raine and his colleagues. PET scans of the brains of 22 murderers, including attempted murder, revealed that the study showed the subjects had much lower levels of glucose uptake than did the members of a control group. In the test, it had nothing to do with age, gender, handedness, ethnicity, motivation, history of head injury, or presence of schizophrenia. None of the subjects were taking psychoactive drugs either. So what does this mean? Raine observed a strongly suggested data that deficits localized to the prefrontal cortex may be related to violence. Now, you're probably thinking, how is this possible? So it's possible because the prefrontal cortex damage is associated with impulsivity, loss of self-control, immaturity, lack of tact, inability to modify and inhibit behavior appropriately, and poor social judgment. So all of these behaviors have been associated with crimes in the past. But you also have to think about conditions of a person's environment and how it affects them. All these behaviors associated with prefrontal cortex damage can cause someone with the damage to fail in school. They can't hold a job down, they can't keep a job, and they also have problems in relationships, whether it's at home or in personal relationships, but they have problems. So this may not be a direct cause of crime, but it might predispose someone afflicted with the condition to a criminal and violent way of life. So later in Raine's studies, he also used PET studies to show that differences exist in the brains of people prone to impulsive violence and those who pre-plan violent crimes. 17 years later, in 2011, a presentation showed that Raine identified an 18% reduction of the volume of the portion of the brain called the amygdala in psychopaths when compared to non-psychopaths. Raine claimed that by examining the brains of children as young as 3, criminologists could already see signs indicating the potential for troubled behavior in the future. Today, Raine's approach is known as neurocriminology. So neurocriminology is a perspective that examines the neurological links between the organism, social factors, and criminal behavior. Other researchers have been able to show that violent psychology in youth is associated with structural and functional damage to the orbital cortex. Now this is different from the adults and the murderers, which is the prefrontal cortex, and now we're talking about the orbital cortex. So the orbital cortex is the part of the brain that is directly over the orbits of the eyes, and some researchers have termed the neuroanatomical findings from studies like these the frontal brain hypothesis. There are also other brain mechanisms involved with aggression. As I mentioned earlier, there is something called mirror cell deficiency. This is when our mirror cells in our brain become active as we watch other people move. Some researchers have suggested that people who are deficient in mirror cells do not work the way they do in others. It can produce a lack of empathy, psychopathy, and even autism. Allergic reactions to common foods have been reported as the cause of violence and homicide by a number of investigations. Some foods, including milk, citrus, fruit, chocolate, corn, wheat, and eggs, are thought to produce allergic reactions in sensitive individuals, leading to swelling of the brain and the brainstem. So this swelling is thought to impede the higher faculties, reducing people's sense of morality, and it creates a condition that supports impulsive behavior. So there are many interesting things about brain dysfunction being a cause of crime, and I really wish I could talk about them all, but I can't. So I'm just going to tell you a few fun facts about brain dysfunction that I found the most interesting to me. So the first one is that in 2010, a study discovered that the brains of monkeys who had the flu while they were pregnant exhibited physical changes similar to those with schizophrenia, which is crazy. So, and also I found interesting that the courts have accepted that the notion of excess sugar consumption resulting in hyperglycemia may be linked to crime. Who knew eating sugar could make you commit a crime? So, I found that interesting. And the last one is that some studies have implicated food additives such as the flavor enhancer monosodium glutamate, dyes, and artificial flavorings in producing a criminal violence, which is also crazy. So watch how many dyes and artificial flavors you eat. And to end it off, some suggestions say that the interplay between heredity, biology, and social and physical environments may be much more complicated than one thought, and may provide the key in any consideration of crime causation. So, thank you.